Hi, Adrian. Hi, Henry. How are you both?
Great.
Very
Excited.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine it must be so exciting for you both to get this film out into the world now. And, before working on this movie, I know you've both had amazing careers. You've played some really iconic characters, but was there a particular moment when you were both reading Due West when you realized that this was a story you had to be part of telling?
Well, Evan came to my house, and Evan's one of my dearest friends, and he and Hardy had actually written the character for me, and he's like, "I'm nervous to give this to you, Annie." So he gives me, that's my nickname. He gives me the script, he gives me a bottle of Tito's, he gives me a pack of cigarettes, and he's like, "Just read it, take it in, tell me what you think." And then I couldn't talk to him for like 2 days after because it was just so emotional. And there's two things I've ever known in my life. One was that I needed to be an actor at 7 years old, and two, that I needed to make this movie. So it became kind of Evan and I against the world as far as like producing it, trying to get this thing made. And Henry was like the absolute perfect person for the pastor character, like it embodied it completely and thought. So I was so excited when he agreed. But Henry, what's your side of that?
Yeah, well, I came in quite late in the game, relative to Adrian and Evan, of course, and Hardy. So, uh, I'm from Texas, and I like the idea of a West Texas story, and I thought that, it was kind of timely um, and it's interesting because you know, it's it's a story about people and community and all those things that I think we kind of lose sight of um, once politics and government kind of enter into the sphere and it was a great story, I thought.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, Adrian, the film delivers some real gut punches during your character's journey, particularly from, a viewer's perspective. Some of those just floored me when I was watching the film. But was it quite daunting for you knowing where this story was going, and what you were gonna have to go through as an actor working on this one?
I, the sad thing is, sorry, allergies. The sad thing is that this stuff happens all the time, to a lot of women, and all of it, including the rape, including all those things. And so, yeah, going into it, I was nervous as hell. It's a lot of responsibility, and I just wanted to do right to all these women out there who, it could be my next door neighbor, it could be my best friend, it could be, your mom, it could be anybody who had to go through this. So I really focused, and it was great that we were all, kind of in Marfa together, bonding. It was very separate from home life, so you really got into the mentality of West Texas, and but yeah, it was very nerve-wracking. I did not want to do a disservice to anybody, so hopefully people love this movie.
Yeah, I think they will. And it's an incredible performance from you and you as well, Henry. And, Mike's faith is obviously a big part of who he is as a pastor. So how much were you thinking about that in your approach to playing him and some of the decisions we see him make over the course of the film?
Well, I mean, obviously that's kind of his backbone, right? Every decision he makes, and it's interesting because um, I think the thing that appeals to me about Mike and everything, you know, people want to do good, and they'll do good however that manifests itself in the situation. And so, he's a pastor, but at the end of the day, he's just a guy, and he's going to go with his heart. And so I think, I don't know, it was an interesting crisis for the character, uh, within the story, the context of the story. And that's always fun as an actor because it gives you it gives you a lot to do.
Yeah, it's
I'll say this.
fascinating.
I just want to give you this, Henry. Like the first day on set and the first scene that Henry ever did was the scene where he drops the woman off
Yeah.
at the center. And that was his first scene in
Wow.
the entire movie that we shot. And I'm like, welcome to Marathon. But you killed it. It was an amazing performance. It's such a fine line to walk.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was a challenge, but it was exciting because we're out there with minimal resources and minimal funds and minimal time, and we're making a film, and it's a wonderful feeling when you do that and then you get to do this and it's going to get seen because a lot of these films unfortunately will slip through the cracks uh, without audience participation and a lot of the films don't even get the chance to have the audience participation because there's a lack of distributors despite all of the content that's out there. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you both mentioned West Texas a couple of times, and it does feel like another character in the film, particularly with the locations we see. So, how much did shooting on location really influence both of your performances and what you had to bring to the table as these characters and the histories that they have?
Well, I definitely think it felt very isolating and isolated, which is a big part of, I think, the woman's character. She's very much so alone. And so when these characters come in and help or don't help, you really feel the warmth of the characters who help her and the community. And then you really feel the emptiness when she's taken advantage of. So I feel like all of that was just really important, that it really made her seem like she was genuinely alone in the world.
Yeah, I mean the isolation of that country, it it does something to you, I think. And like the people who live out there, they're a different breed of Texan altogether, But but it's an interesting place.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adrian, you've obviously been part of some big movies, big TV shows, obviously, with high stakes in maybe a sci-fi or comic book setting. But, this is a very high stakes story as well. It doesn't have that spectacle. It's just this very real story, as you said before. So is it quite challenging for you to keep that sense of escalation going from scene to scene and knowing what the woman is going through as her journey unfurls throughout the story?
I just think it had to be honest. And honestly, I'm so thankful that I got the opportunity to do Friday Night Lights. It's and I kind of based the woman on Tyra, my character, as if Tyra didn't go to college, what circumstance might she be in? And so it's a very similar character if you really look at it that way. And I've taken Tyra to every single character I've ever played. So it was like that was a tap in. And thankfully, that show prepared me to be able to go places very quickly because there was not a lot of time to work on these things. Thankfully, I'd had plenty of time personally with the script because, again, I became a producer early on. Um, but I feel like that tap in was just, it was innately there from Meisner and doing, Friday Night Lights, and that's how we shot.
Yeah, amazing. And Henry, it feels like there's a lot of history between the woman and Mike that's alluded to in some of their earlier interactions. Obviously, Adrian said you filmed up almost your last scene first, but did you give a lot of thought to maybe their past and the role he's played in her life leading up to this point where she finds herself?
Yeah, I absolutely. Well, I think that especially when you're dealing with small towns and communities that don't really move around that much. Everybody knows each other and everybody's known each other for a long time. And uh, and I think the thing for Mike is that he's kind of amazed that he doesn't know everything that's going on. He wants to get to the bottom of it because he feels like he knows everything in the community. He knows everything about everyone in the community. And it's almost an affront to his being that he can't, that he didn't know that there was this this kind of thing happening in his town. So yeah, and I grew up in a small town, so I think that feeling never really leaves you of, you know, your anonymity is already gone, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And the issues at the heart of Due West obviously very relevant, and as you said, Adrian, unfortunately something that is still happening out there. But did you find both of you find yourselves thinking about those themes while you're making the film, or has it only really hit you since you've obviously had audiences start responding to it, obviously going on the festival circuit and having the great response you've had to the film?
Honestly, it's an issue that is awful, and the fact that anybody has the right to say anything over somebody else's body, that theme right there was the reason I had to make this movie, because it's very, very timely, and in Texas it's very scary. um so for people, and the other thing that we wanted to do was make a movie where people started talking. It wasn't about beating people over the head with the issue and the politics of it. It was about getting people to see a version. This is one version of many versions of this story. And and I will tell you, many people, especially men, have come up to me in screenings afterwards on either side and said, wow, I never thought of it like that. And taking a really good look at the fact that nobody has the right, everybody has a different issue, and it's never easy for a woman to make this decision, ever.
Yeah, no, so well said. And Henry, at the same time, did you feel that as well? Obviously, playing this pastor, and I think people have certain expectations of what he'll think and feel. But did you feel a lot of that pressure as well going through this process?
Well, it's a human issue and it's a personal issue. Um, I think to Adrian's point, it's that's the crux of it. It's a personal issue, and we're dealing with the idea of, you know, governments making decisions, and that's always scary, right? So for me, um, as an actor, it's always the human story that is interesting. And it's always, I think it's art's, benefit to people and humanity, uh, to sort of hold up a mirror and maybe offer a different perspective or make you think, right? The best things leave you with thoughts, and if you feel one way or the other about the issue, um, it's an interesting exercise to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to say, watching this film, it is an eye-opening experience to see what these characters and obviously what the woman goes through. And do you both feel that telling a story like this has to be done with independent filmmaking and it's not a story maybe you could tell with a big studio? And is that important to you to be able to tell the story regardless of the budget and the location and that kind of things?
Absolutely, because I think the intimacy is really important. And, you get a lot of talking heads when you go to big studios. I'm not dissing that. And it's necessary for certain films for sure. But movies like this need to have very few cooks in the kitchen. And it needs to be something that is between the director and the actor and, maybe one other producer, and just going for it and being able to make and create the film that you want. Too much
Yeah.
money does not make it better. Sometimes,
Absolutely. And, corporations normally don't want to touch issues like this except with a 10-foot pole. So, you know, they'd like to collect the revenue, but they don't want to have their names on it.
Right. Exactly.
Very well said. Well, Adrianne, Henry, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about the film, and thank you for making the film because I think it is such an important story to put out there, and something people need to learn about and people need to see. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks for watching and thanks for talking to us about it.